Good morning, I am Adam Harris, and this is The Day Ahead. Don't forget to click subscribe below to receive daily market analysis videos and important alerts. On the economic calendar for today, we have GDP data out of the UK at 9:30 a.m. and in the currencies and commodities on the move, will the stronger US dollar continue to move the markets out the way? In the global indices as well as the equities in focus, there are both bullish signals and bearish charts indicating a divided sentiment, not unlike November and December last year, which ended with sideways markets. You can jump to any chapter by clicking the time link in the description below. In the currencies, having a look at the US dollar index here, we can see that it's comfortably broken through 96 last week and is already midway towards almost exactly at 96.50, almost midway towards 97, and my expectation is to see it continue today to see if we can get through it. There's probably some local resistance here, but no reason why it wouldn't continue. So what that will imply is that throughout today it makes sense for euro dollar to head lower down to 1.13 and test that level again. Looking at cable, and of course we're going to get Brexit issues this week as well, but looking at cable, although it did produce that sort of indecision, slightly green candle there off a level of support at 1.29, the subsequent price action is not looking very bullish at all, so not really seeing much of an opportunity there for that to strengthen. And then having a look at EuroCAD, so EuroCAD having pulled back, produced a nice little bearish candle, hasn't followed through by breaking the low of that candle yet, so actually still looks potentially bullish. We'll see how that plays out today, but a break below the low, that would be a nice little follow through and a rejection of that level of resistance. Aussie CAD as well. So Aussie CAD having broken through that level of support, coming back, rejection candle, haven't followed through yet and broken the low of that, waiting on that. CAD Swissy. So a couple of those waiting for those to do now. CAD Swissy having produced a really nice swing low, very bullish behavior on Friday, resulting in a very strong rejection candle here, which is likely to result in a break back below this level of resistance and not finding support there. So that's going to be interesting to see if we stay above that level today, but it ain't looking positive. So that may ultimately turn out to be a negative trade outcome. We'll see, and still waiting on Swiss yen to break below this level. This pattern looking really nice and bearish so far. Indicators a little bit divergent there, so waiting for price to continue to test that level and then ultimately break through that. And then finally, last on my list for today in terms of currencies, Aussie Kiwi just ultimately waiting for this to break back below that level, and this one you can see the MACD looking nice and flat along with price action going sideways, so that looks really nice and convergent. All of that actually looking very much as though it's going to go according to plan. Next, onto the commodities on the move and having a look at gold. Gold has done a retracement back to the 382 level, produced a bullish candle, broken above the high, and is currently kind of wavering a little bit. If we do get a much stronger US dollar, as discussed in the currencies section, we might actually see price reverse and start to break. If we break this low, we'll go back into a downtrend. As I was saying before, 618 retracement would have been better, but if we ultimately do this, then gold will fail to follow through, and so we'll likely see a deeper retracement driven by that stronger US dollar will certainly help it. Looking at silver as well, silver having pulled back into a nice little area, justifying its continuation. It's also producing a potential swing high here, which might imply that it wants to hit back down low. We might be at the beginning of a much overdue weekly retracement, so let's just see how that chart looks, but ultimately a deeper retracement back into the moving averages, which puts us closer to the 382 of this Fibonacci here. So I'm just going to clean this chart up a little bit there, and then having a look at palladium. So again, that potential for that stronger US dollar that we spoke about on Thursday and Friday. Palladium having broken through its level of resistance and also encountering again, starting to fail already here, looking to come back below this level. And let's see if it can manage to produce another bullish candle to continue onwards. Then having a look at crude oil. So this is crude oil on the weekly, very similar with gas oil. So on the weekly, we've produced a bearish candle last week. I'm looking for a break below the low of this, ultimately to see if we do continue down. So if we break the high before breaking the low, that will then be invalidated, but that potential for a bearish continuation, also a little bit of a stronger US dollar there, gives us a sense that that's a possibility. Gas oil here having broken through, produced a series of bullish candles and yet failed to take off. That just implies we're not really there yet, so we might find price ultimately falls back below that level. And then just adding Bitcoin and Ethereum, a few cryptos to my list to update those. Very little action happening here at the moment, technically nothing to trade, and very little action here. So there's pretty much I'm not going to say flatlining, but it's close to that at this point in time. There's just not a lot happening. I see the media is talking about big moves, but on the chart technically there is nothing worth trading at this time. And now having a look at the global indices, and I have to say, I think this week is going to be exciting. We've got Wall Street having pulled back, as per our trading plan, back into the moving averages. This is what I'm going to be looking for. Nice bullish candle. We've sort of gapped up above the high. We're wavering a little bit. I really need to see how we are by the end of tonight's US session. But just showing US, this is the S&P 500, also bullish candle, gapped up above the high. I'd like to see a follow through, but certainly that potential. So I'll be keeping an eye on this around 3-4 o'clock this afternoon to see if it starts taking off and what it does between now and then. Also, bullish candle on the Tech 100, would have preferred it to be off the 6,800 level, just for that extra additional support, just nice and crisp, but the markets don't necessarily have to behave exactly as per our plans. Also looking at UK 100, also producing a bullish candle, also going sideways a bit. So okay, so all of those potentially getting ready to continue here. We've got the DAX, which actually has set up on the weekly as a bearish candle on a break below this, should in theory be and from experience be a continuation to the downside. It's sitting at around a level of support, and so this being close to that 11,000 level, and I'd be interested to see how that ultimately turns out. And yet this is really interesting. Going across and having a look at Asia, we've produced on the Hang Seng, which we were waiting for, a beautiful bullish candle. We're about currently price action looking nice and bullish and about to potentially break that high, produce that swing low, and continue on upwards. So keeping in mind that the Hang Seng has been incredibly bearish over the last 6 to 8 months, it's interesting to see how bullish it is given, and so that implies, I was going to say given the overall circumstances, that implies a bullish continuation. Also Australia 200 finishing or currently producing a bullish candle. Again, would have preferred a deeper retracement. But for the most part, if they're ready and happy to continue onwards, that does actually imply that there are certainly bulls in the market. It doesn't make sense for them to be bullish and the US markets to be bearish. It's much more likely that the US markets are going to turn out to be bullish. So that's why I say this week's going to be quite interesting. Technically, the charts are looking nice and bullish. Let's see how the markets ultimately, what they produce in terms of technicals versus fundamentals. And lastly, for today, look at the equities in focus. Interesting. We're getting some mixed signals now, which we haven't had for the last 2 to 3 weeks. Have a look at this. So we've got Facebook, we've got a bullish candle, we pull back to the moving averages, so a potential swing entry long there looks pretty good. Okay, so that looks nice. But we're looking at the fangs here. These are the biggest 5 movers on the NASDAQ. We've also got Apple producing that bullish candle, potential swing low opportunity here. That all looking good. Then we get to Amazon, and then it falters. So this is interesting. It's struggling to go higher. It's encountering some strong resistance there. That is significant. We can't really have one faltering while the rest do well. It's potentially related to the Jeff Bezos issue, the email issue, if you haven't heard about it, with Googling. Very nice in terms of blackmail behavior, the response to that as well, very interesting as well. Then having a look at, say, Netflix. So Netflix currently looking pretty good to continue onwards. Another bullish candle setup. However, there's this level of resistance that I spoke about. I still need to wait and see what happens with regards to breaking, seeing price action break through that. Boston Scientific, man, is this one looking just, this is just a winner. So I'm only really talking about the, when I say that, that means I'm not buying into it just yet. From a technical perspective, not at all. I'm just highlighting how this one is now approaching its highs again and is incredibly bullish. This is a very bullish sign overall, supporting the idea that the market, this isn't one of the big 5, but it certainly is doing incredibly well in terms of its growth. So very impressive there. Then getting on to my ones that have historically been bearish but recently have been quite bullish, they appear to have turned on a dime. So the rest of these are actually looking quite bearish. The only one that's still maintaining its bullishness, so in other words, all of these now starting to head a little bit lower, so implying that we're up for a little bit of a storm. BP, just highlighting this, is coming back down to this historical level of support and resistance. So if I do ultimately end up finding a bullish candle here and finding a swing low, this will continue on upwards. Those MACD, the momentum indicator, looking nice and bullish. So this really making sense for me, but interesting to note these have gone back to being divisive again and starting to look slightly bearish or undecided compared to the more bullish ones. So that just implying we might be heading back into that territory that we were in December, November, where we've got a mixture of bullish and bearish charts. On that note, ladies and gents, I want to wish you a wonderful week. This is let's make it a good one, and if it's trending, I'll be there. Just a reminder to hit the subscribe button. If you want to stay abreast of what's happening in the market, I'll be producing and bringing you the latest in the markets every morning in a freshly produced video.